Uh-huh.
Formal meeting for the City Commission's called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Here.
Mr. O'Neill,
Here.
Mrs. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Rue.
Here. Please stand for the invocation and the pledge. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to make decisions for this city. I pray that you would give wisdom, integrity, vulnerability. Okay. Is there a motion to appoint a new city commissioner?
I would like to move that the commission appoint Bridget Houston to refill your vacant position.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Comments from commissioners?
Yes, I do have a couple.
Ms.
Go ahead,
Crystal,
Dr. E.
Oh, no, go
That's
right
right.
ahead.
Okay, thank you. I definitely want to welcome Ms. Houston. You did a fabulous job during your application process, and I definitely appreciate that from you. And I look forward to working and having a majority female. So that's groundbreaking as well. Thank you, Tracy. So I love the diversity in your younger age, right? I love that diversity. With having said that, I just wanted to speak directly about Chris. He, again, was my favorite vote. He's from Springfield. He works just as passionately for the kids as I do, being an educator. And I just wanted everyone to know that that was a very tough decision, but I still definitely welcome you here. Okay? Thank you, guys.
You were in a great crowd of people that applied for this job. I was shocked at the number of people that stepped up that really have an interest in city government. And I was so impressed. You did do a fine job the night of your presentation, as Chris did. And again, I wish you all the best.
I too was very pleased with the number of people who applied to be a member of this commission. As a former social studies government teacher, it's good to see the public's interest in local government. And I want to applaud you. You came well prepared. And as an educator, I appreciate people who do their homework, and you did yours. Chris did a great job also, but preparation counts. Thank you.
Bridget, thanks for your interest in doing this. After we take the vote, I guess we'll make it more formal. But anyway, just appreciate your energy. It was a difficult process. It was a difficult decision. But I do look forward to working with you following our vote. Okay. Is there any comments from the audience? Okay. None. Go ahead and clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. Rue.
Yes. Excellent. Congratulations. You're a new city commissioner. So our clerk is going to go ahead and swear you in, and then you are going to work.
We'll come down here to the center.
You want to come down the center? Your family's welcome to stand with you. Karen, let me get, Karen, go ahead and get a picture.
I'll stand on this side if you can turn the microphone on.
Just let Karen get some.
Okay, you ready? Is it on?
Yep.
All right. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
Bridget Houston,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the State of Ohio
of the State of Ohio
and the Charter
and the Charter
of the City of Springfield, Ohio,
of the City of Springfield, Ohio,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
honestly, and impartially
honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties of my office
discharge the duties of my office
of City Commissioner.
of City Commissioner.
I further swear
I further swear
that I have not violated
that I have not violated
any provisions of Section 5
any provisions of Section 5
of the Charter
of the Charter
of the City of Springfield, Ohio,
of the City of Springfield, Ohio.
so help me God.
So help me God.
We have a seat for you up here, Bridget, once you're ready.
And Commissioners, our budget public hearing is scheduled for 6:50,
Yeah.
so we will need to take just a short
Yeah, we're gonna
break
just
until
take
that
time,
begins. So
yeah.
if they want to get pictures or,
Anything else you want to say, Brian?
nope,
I'm just
good.
messing with you. Yeah, if you want to get pictures over here in front of the banner, we do have about 15 minutes, as Brian told us.
Somebody is
I can babysit for 15 minutes. Really good. Lots of experience. Public hearing scheduled for 6:50 is called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Here?
Mr. O'Neill,
Here.
Mrs. Brown,
Here.
Mrs. Houston,
Here.
Mr. Rue.
Here. Has proper legal notice been given of this hearing?
Notice of a public hearing for the purpose of public review and consideration of the 2024 budget of the City of Springfield was published in the Springfield News and Sun, a newspaper of general circulation within the city. Attached here too is a true and correct copy of the legal notice published on November 23rd, 2023.
I move that the communication be ordered received, recorded in the minutes, and filed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening. So this will be a high-level overview of the budget for 2024. I'd like to quickly explain how we got here. So the budget process began in May with the tax budget. Departments then submitted their budgets in early September, and departmental meetings occurred in late September and early October. The city manager and I met many times after those to get to the 2024 city manager's preliminary budget actual document, which we refer to as the budget book, that were required by city charter to have on November 1st. We presented that larger document to commissioners in depth over 2 evenings in mid-November. My presentation this evening reflects any changes that occurred as a result of those meetings. Also, I want to highlight that this is the first budget that we prepared in Oracle, which is our new financial software system. I want to thank all of the departments that were eager and adopted the new system. It would not have been possible without them. Some of the examples of the improvement with this year's budget book, this document will be available on the city's website tomorrow, the larger budget book. But when you compare that to previous budgets out on the website, you're going to see narratives for each department. So each department telling their why. You'll see full-time equivalent or staffing reports for each department and a full budget for all funds by department. So the new software has really afforded us the opportunity to be more transparent and put information out there that previously would have been difficult for us to do based on limitations from our software. Moving into the city's general fund. So the general fund is the main major operating fund for the city. It accounts for all revenues and expenses except for those required to be accounted for in another fund. Total revenues are projected to be around $56.8 million in 2024. This is a $1.8 million decrease compared to 2023 revised numbers. This is due to timing of grant reimbursements from 2023 for 2022 expenses related to the National Advanced Air Mobility Center of Excellence at the Springfield Beckley Municipal Airport, and also signs of a slowing economy that we're starting to see. 90% of every dollar generated in income tax is deposited in the city's general fund. We're projecting a 3.3% increase compared to 2023 revised budget. And I'll discuss income tax more in depth in later slides. So this slide depicts the resources for revenues received in the general fund. As you'll see, the largest piece of that pie is income tax. So I'd like to continue to voice our appreciation to the citizens of Springfield for the passage of the 0.4% levy in 2017 and the subsequent renewal in 2021. We would certainly be presenting a very different budget without it. As you see, the city is heavily reliant on income tax revenue to deliver essential services and would not be able to deliver those with the cuts that have impacted us at the state level. So moving on to some of those cuts. Next, you see the local government fund and state shared taxes at 4%. We are projecting a decrease in the local government fund from $2.4 million to $2.1 million in 2024 compared to 2023 due to House Bill 1 and income tax changes at the state level. To remind Commission and residents, a little over a decade ago, when combined with the estate tax, that number was over $5 million. We're looking at 2.1 for next year. Services and charges are at 3%, which includes things like contractor applications, inspections, and building permits. Fines and forfeitures are also at 3%, which includes various fines and court costs. All other at 9% includes hotel motel tax, intergovernmental agreements, investment interest, and reimbursements from other funds. This next slide is a visual representation of how the general fund revenues have grown from $37.2 million in 2016 to $56.8 million in 2024. Again, the income tax levy passed in 2017, and this graph shows how vital the passage of that additional levy was for the city to continue to provide services. Again, that decline that you see for 2024 is due to grant reimbursement and downward trends that we're seeing in the economy. Moving on to general fund expenditures. So the total general fund expenditures are projected to be around $57.6 million. That number includes personnel costs, supplies, contracts, transfers to other funds like the Fire Service Enhancement Fund, basically the necessary expenditures for the city to operate. The 2023 original budget projected an operating deficit of $668,000. We expect an operating surplus of $1.4 million in 2023, mainly due to those grant reimbursements that I mentioned previously and conservative budgeting. In 2024, we're presenting a general fund budget with an operational deficit of $876,000. That deficit can be attributed to inflation and, again, signs of a slowing economy. Reserve spending is necessary to provide the services we've provided in the past and invest in critical infrastructure. I just want to remind Commission and everyone that this is a budget. A budget is a roadmap. As we move into 2024, the city manager and I will continue to work with department leaders to navigate the economic environment that we're in, and we'll continue to make and recommend decisions that are fiscally responsible and sustainable. The next slide highlights the reserves we're projected to have on hand at the end of 2024 based on the budget presented. The Auditor of State requires 1 month of expenditures, or 8.3% on hand. We're projecting $10 million, or 17.4% at the end of 2024. There's a correction to that slide there. This exceeds the Commission's goal of 10% and the Government Finance Officers Association, which is the professional organization for public finance officers, recommendation of 16.7% for 2 months of expenditures. And just reiterate that maintaining that is what allows us to dip into reserves when needed, as we're projecting to do in 2024, but also aids in ensuring financial stability for the city. This is a visual representation of those general fund expenditures. Bulk of expenditures are in public safety and municipal court at 56% and 9%. Public safety includes police, fire, and dispatch. Municipal court is the judicial side and clerk. There's 10% for neighborhood services, which represents engineering and community development department. 2% for NPPRD and SCAT. That reflects the city's general fund contributions to National Trail Parks and Recreation District and the Springfield City Area Transit System. All other includes administrative departments such as finance, the city manager's office, legal, information technology, and human resources. We'll look at the staffing considerations in this budget. We reasonably and conservatively budget full staffing while also considering overtime and benefits. Police is authorized at 130 sworn officers. Fire is authorized at 130, exceeding the charter requirement of 127. Beginning in 2023, fire was budgeted in the Fire Service Enhancement Fund, and the general fund reflects the transfer to that fund in the amount of expenses. Overall staffing is budgeted at 584 full-time equivalents over all funds, substantial reduction over prior years, and was necessary to grow administrative capacity in some areas like human resources, police, with the hiring of Permanent Improvement Fund. The Permanent Improvement Fund is where we budget non-water and sewer funding income tax going into the general fund. The other 10% goes into the Permanent Improvement Fund. That's for the city's codified ordinances, and we transfer additional monies from the general fund in order to meet the city's capital needs. The revenue in the Permanent Improvement Fund is projected at $6.6 million for 2024. $5.1 million is attributed to income tax. The rest is in general fund transfers. 2024 budgeted expenditures include $3.1 million towards the Neighborhood Street Paving Program, purchasing and outfitting 8 police cruisers, completing 2 medic unit remounts, and investing in fire gear replacement and rescue tools that are critical for operation. Also included is $175,000 for capital improvements in city parks that are maintained by National Trail Parks and Recreation District. Other projects include multiple airport projects with parking lot paving and some grant matches, traffic projects that include some design for replacement, and much needed repairs and maintenance to city buildings, which includes a roof, some flooring replacement, and concrete apron replacements at a fire station. We move into the utility funds. Water, sewer, and stormwater utilities combined have committed over $100 million to improve critical infrastructure in our community over the last several years. Examples of those capital programs include the high rate treatment facility at wastewater treatment plant, the Erie Express sewer, continued neighborhood upgrades, and in the 2024 budget, control system upgrades of over $6 million at the water treatment plant, recoding the elevated storage tank at $2 million, and the Erie Pump Station pretreatment facility addition of $7 million. Rate increases previously approved by commission are reflected in this budget. The final of those approved increases take effect on January 1st. So in closing, I'd like to highlight some of the projects that we would not have been able to complete without the income tax levy and how we've kept our commitment in passing that levy. More than $13 million has been spent on paving over 80 neighborhood streets through the Neighborhood Streets Paving Program since 2018. Keeping in mind that in many cases, we're also replacing the infrastructure underneath pavement with water and sewer funds, and that is not included in that number. We've also made substantial police and fire capital improvements since 2018, including the 2024 budget. That would include 3 fire apparatus, 5 medic units with 2 remounts, and 50 police cruisers. That concludes my presentation on the 2024 budget. As a reminder, there's no action tonight on this budget. On December 19th at the next meeting, I will bring forth the appropriations ordinance that is in line with the budget that has been presented to you over the last month or so. Again, this presentation and the full budget document will be available on the city's website tomorrow. That's at springfieldohio.gov/finance. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Before we go into questions, would you note that the previous roll call would count for the one I didn't call? Still getting used to the format. But anyway, thank you for the excellent report and the awesome work you're doing. Comments from commissioners? Dr. Austin.
I again want to thank the people of Springfield for passing the income tax levy. It really got our bacon out of the fire and has allowed us to do some very positive things in this city. I also want to commend Brian and Katie and Katie's predecessor for keeping a handle on expenditures, particularly full-time equivalent positions. While some chose to use the federal money to hire more people, we did not do that. We chose one-time expenditures because we knew at some point in time that federal money would end. And so we chose not to go down the road of hiring additional employees and then at some future date having to absorb that cost in our local funds, in our local budget. So I want to thank you and congratulate you and all the staff for the hard work that you've done in bringing this budget to us, and it's one I can quite easily live with. Thank you.
Comments?
This meeting.
Any comments from the public on the budget?
I do want to make a comment on the
Go
budget.
ahead.
Okay. Again, I echo some of Dr. Estrop's comments. It's hard to not have a deficit spending budget based on what's being, when you're going to take $1.87 million less this year than last year, and you're only projecting a deficit of 600 and some odd thousand. I think that's commendable. However, having said that, we're not really going to have a deficit spending budget. We're funding for people. We're budgeting for people that aren't on the payroll yet, and they probably all won't appear at this year. So we have to be prepared for that. I get it. I just want to, again, I've been here probably longer than I should have been, but I'm still here. In my first budget, I had to vote no because it was seriously deficit spending, and I don't believe in that whatsoever. Being in small business, if you don't borrow, it has to come from somewhere. and we're going to be responsible for it. So all I would do is next year, I would caution us to be very careful of not, we've done a lot of good things over the last 5 years. And I agree with Dr. Estrop. We have used the federal money very wisely. In years to come, we're going to be able to point things that we did to be in good position. But again, we all know increases in salaries. We're a service-orientated business, and all we have is our people to offer. And we're going to continue to have to give increases. I remember when we weren't able to do that. And because of what the people did for us to give us the increase in income tax, we're able to meet our expenditures. I just don't look at this as a deficit spending budget. I look at this as one that we're going to have to make some adjustments next year. And I know the city manager and you, Katie, recognize that. And we will be prepared to do that. It's not a budget that we need to panic. It just isn't. But it teeters on the verge of people would look at it and say, oh my God, they're spending more than they're taking in. That's the easy statement. But that's not totally true. That's why we put reserves there. And we're going to use a little bit of that. And hopefully that won't come to fruition. We'll be okay. So again, I had to say that, but I think the budget really looks good based on what we've gone through here. And I don't know what the future brings as far as inflation, and no one else does. We can just hope that things continue to go well for the city of Springfield, because I think we're doing a lot of the right thing. So that's it.
Is there a motion to adjourn the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes. Okay, we will go into first readings. Is there approval for minutes? Motion to approve a minute?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Question or comments? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes. Now first reading ordinance.
Excuse me. Authorizing an expenditure of up to $1,007,670 to the Board of Clark County Commissioners to obtain communication and dispatch services for the 2024 calendar year.
I'll move.
Second.
These are first
These are
readings.
first readings.
First reading.
And I was right behind you.
Sorry, you're right. Sorry about that.
I was followed right behind you, Dr.
It was a
E.
good, lively finance discussion earlier, okay? So no sleeping. Okay, continue, Jill.
Adopting a policy to assist owners of certain residential property needing to replace their septic systems and connect to the city's public sewer system, and repealing ordinance number 18136. Adopting a third revised policy to assist owners of certain residential properties, especially susceptible to sewer backup and needing water backup prevention assistance on their property, to assist in preventing periodic sewer backup into their property, and repealing ordinance number 172. Authorizing the purchase of 9 LifePak 15V4 monitor defibrillators and necessary accessories from Stryker Medical for an amount not to exceed $348,906.50, plus trading credit of $58,500 for a net purchase amount not to exceed $290,406.50 through Sourcewell pursuant to the Sourcewell Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Thank you. I have two comments. First, Brian, can you speak to the expenditure that we'll be voting on next time and the dispatch expenditure, the difference between this and when we were in the dispatch?
Yes, Commissioner. So we're several years into a contract that we entered into with the Board of Clark County Commissioners for combined dispatch services. This number represents the calls for service from October 1 of 22 through September 30th of 23, and then bills based off of that original contract, a certain dollar amount per call for service. So you see the number this year is just over $1 million. We have hovered just around $1 million for the several years of this contract with the county. When we exited the dispatch service, we were approximately spending around $2.1 million.
$1 million savings. And then secondly, can you speak to the life pack, the longevity of those? How often do we replace them?
Yes, I'll ask Fire Chief Jacob King to answer that.
Thank you. Doing research, there's only two organizations that actually decide when you should predictively replace your defibrillator. American Heart Association put out a new study in 2023 about when you should replace those. I haven't been able to view it because it is $585 to review the pamphlet. There's that. Number two is the United States Army actually does the testing as well for the U.S. military, and they advise defibrillators should be replaced at least every 8 to 10 years.
Thank you.
Other comments on first readings, Dr. Estrop?
Thank you. Item 279-23, could I get a little more information on that? And are the folks we're talking about here city residents?
Yeah, Commissioner, I'll have Chris Moore, our Service Director, answer that.
Commissioner, to answer the city resident part, yes, this is for, excuse me, for city residents only.
Great.
This is a program that has been in place since 2002. It was updated a little bit in 2018. And then these updates tonight really just add some clarifying language to what type of residence qualifies. It's a 1, 2, or 3 family residence. It lessens the burden on what kind of diffuser device they need, which will lessen costs. And it requires people to give us a video proving there aren't any clean water connections, that their downspouts aren't tied into the sewer drain. The good news in this is that when we started this program, there were 392 septic systems inside the city limits, and we are down to 165.
That is very good.
That is, we haven't used this program 165 times. There have been demolitions and other things, but we're down to 165 and whittling away.
That's great news. Thank you.
Any comments from the public on first readings only? Okay, let's proceed with second reading ordinance, please.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a subrecipient funding agreement, Continuum of Care Rental Assistance 2023 to 2024, between the city and Springfield Metropolitan Housing Authority to conduct a Continuum of Care funded tenant-based rental assistance program in an amount not to exceed $183,288, and confirming and approving related expenditures from October 1, 2023 to the passage of this ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners?
Yeah, can you go into that a little bit more, Brian, please?
Yeah. I'll actually ask Shannon
Where's Shannon?
Meadows, our Community Development Director, to talk about this program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is one of those pieces of legislation that it seems like it just keeps coming back.
I got more.
You hear it about every 3 to 5 months, so it must be something different, but it's not. The Continuum of Care funding comes originally from HUD, passed through the state of Ohio, and then ultimately to communities within 80 different counties in the state to fund housing choice vouchers through Springfield Metropolitan Housing Authority for households who have disabled individuals living in the home in order to prevent homelessness or risk of becoming homeless. So you guys saw a portion of this program as we prepared for the application. Then you saw accepting the application, and tonight you'll be voting on the agreement with SMHA to carry out the work, which is to provide that funding for those housing vouchers.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Any comments from the audience on that? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Approving the establishment of the Melody Parks New Community Authority as a new community authority pursuant to Chapter 349 of the Ohio Revised Code.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? I have two comment cards on this. I'm going to ask Springfield Township trustee Tim Foley to go ahead and speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Foley, Springfield Township trustee. The address is 2851 Old Clifton Road, Springfield, Ohio, 45502. TIF, CRA, and NCA programs are not part of CETA. TIF and CRA reduce real estate tax revenue to the township and school district over the duration of the tax redirection and tax abatement term. The funding for city residential development within Springfield Township and the Clark Shawnee School District boundaries should not be the responsibility of the township and school district. The accounting and auditing associated with TIF, CRA, and NCA will be a nightmare over time. Imposing TIF and CRA may be legal, but is it fair and ethical to Springfield Township and Clark Shawnee?
Thank you. Then Superintendent of Clark Shawnee, Brian Kuhn.
Good evening, Brian Kuhn, Superintendent. Address is for the board office is 3680 Selma Road, and that would be 45502. I'm here tonight to share some additional data points that I believe are relevant and necessary to put on the City Commission's official record. During the November 21st, 2023 City Commission meeting, Commissioner Estrop shared data from the developer related to projected revenue that the Clark Shawnee Local School District is estimated to receive over the next 30 years. Commissioner Estrop stated that there were proposals anticipated to generate $66 million in revenue and a separate proposal anticipated to generate $71 million in revenue over the next 30 years. Commissioner Estrop further stated that Clark Shawnee ended up with a deal projecting $63 million in revenue over the next 30 years. And these are indeed the numbers that are in the developer's projections as we understand them. It's important to note that the developer also projects the cost to educate students living in the single-family homes to be $71,640,000 over the same 30-year period. This data point is critical in providing context for the previously mentioned figures. Regardless of which aforementioned financial projection is applied, they all come up short in the cost to educate students anticipated to come to us from just the single-family homes in Melody Park. I want to state for the record that we do not dispute that we will see an increase in state funding to educate students based on projected enrollment. And we do not dispute that any tax revenue from commercial properties will help to offset the revenue lost under the CRA. But I would also like to state that our biggest challenge with the Melody Park development is the same challenge that the developer faces, the initial infrastructure costs. The developer can make use of tax increment financing and community reinvestment area provisions to help reduce the impact that the initial financial infrastructure costs have on the development project. As a school district, we do not have these tools available to us. The tax revenue we will receive will help to fund the education of students, but does not address our infrastructure need because we do not have space for the number of students being projected. And like the developer, who would not build roads in quarter-mile stretches or install water and sewer lines for each individual house as they come online, we cannot add classrooms one at a time as students enroll. If we're going to build additional infrastructure and instructional space, we need to do it all at once, just like roads are built all at once in the development and water and sewer lines are installed all at once. My last comment again is that we as a district are supportive of and understand the benefits of development for the community. Our challenges is that development without proper resources makes it difficult to properly serve the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Before you make any comments, I know you have some. I just want to know from my perspective, in learning a lot about this, more than what I know, a lot less than what obviously Superintendent Kuhn and Dr. Estrop are going to talk about school financing. But I can tell you, just listening to a lot of this and learning about state financing school systems, the state does not set up areas for growth and development very well at all. Matter of fact, they hinder growth and development. They don't help schools grow in times when they need to grow, and they don't. They really kind of gridlock us. So we have competing interests. The township doesn't want to see the residents taxed any more than they have to be. As the township's going to grow with this annexation, the schools getting taxed. It is very frustrating. But I can tell you from my perspective, I will not speak for the board. I'll just speak from my perspective. As a mayor, I want to see the best for the area as it develops. And I know that we've been trying to work with the developer to put the best programs forward and try to present what we can, knowing that as far as the city is concerned, we need to see that growth in our area. We are way behind on the curve on housing. I know you're not disputing that, but we need to definitely provide growth in the area that is that we have the opportunity to do. So, but I do appreciate your comments. I know we have competing interests, but I appreciate both your leaderships and your comments. Dr. Estrop.
Thank you. I agree that the state of Ohio has failed to take into account the growth for school districts. While they have in fact put on the table substantial incentives for companies to locate here because we certainly benefit from the job, and also housing development, they have yet to tackle the issue of school construction. And that needs to be fixed at the state level. We can't fix that here. That's a state decision. But as communities grow, it only makes sense that their physical plant needs to grow with them. They need more classrooms. Now, I did a little work on state aid also because schools derive their money from two sources. One, the real estate taxes, and we talked about that last time, 63 million in new real estate taxes coming in. And the other money they get, Superintendent Kuhn said, was from state aid. That's money straight from the state of Ohio. So I just took $2,800 per student, Brian, because I don't know what your real number is, but I think that's pretty close. 2,400. And I used the number 400 because you said 375, but very frankly, it was easier math for me to use 400. Okay? So the first year in state aid alone, if you figure that you're going to pick up 40 kids the first year, and I just arbitrarily said we'll spread it over 10 years, you're going to you're going to get from the state $112,000. Ultimately, when it's all done at the end of the first 10 or at the end of the 30 years, and again, I'm using 2,800, so it may be a little high, but over 30 years, I also assumed no increase in the state's allocation to the resource equalizer formula. Now, I know that's not going to happen. The state never goes without increasing that sum. So the bucks are going to, the 2,800 floor is probably very, very conservative, spread over 30 years. Based on all of this, I show Clark Shawnee and state aid picking up an additional $23,520,000 over the 30-year period. So if you add the 63 to the 23, you're right at $86,520,000. I think that's a pretty good estimate, perhaps a little conservative because I didn't adjust up the $2,800 base.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Root, can I just?
Absolutely.
Yep, that number is about right. The challenge right now is the state is only funding their formula at 50%, which again, as you know, school funding challenges are crazy, but right now the state funding formula, they're only funding at 50%. So if those were true and 2,400 was the number, or you estimate 2,800, we'd only be getting half of that based on the current funding metric. And it's slated to go up to 66% next year, but beyond that, legislators could do anything. So, no, but yes, it's a complex equation, as you well know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, go ahead, clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. Emergency ordinances?
Excuse me. Confirming purchases and the obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefore and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners, from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Computer is not cooperating. We'll go back to paper. Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Providing for supplemental appropriations within various funds and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners, from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Amending ordinance number 23-156, which authorized application for an airport improvement program grant through the Federal Aviation Administration to revise the local matching expenditure and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrad?
I was wondering if staff might provide us a little more information
Yeah.
about the nature of this project.
Yeah, Commissioner. So this is for some runway and lighting repairs out at the airport. This is a grant program that we received through FAA, and this appeared on the last agenda. There was a miscalculation of the exact match amount because we have to authorize that match amount. There was actually a $100 increase from what was approved last meeting to this meeting.
$100 increase? Okay. I think we can live with that. Thank you.
Other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing an expenditure in an amount not to exceed $107,338.96 to contract with Superior LLC, a Central Square company, to provide the city with maintenance services for various computer software applications for the period January 1, 2024 through December 31, 2024, and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners, from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a subrecipient funding agreement with the Nehemiah Foundation, provide CDBG funding for the Faith Community Crisis Response Initiative in an amount not to exceed $69,000, confirming and approving related expenditures incurred from December 1, 2023 to the passage of this ordinance, and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Shannon, could you share about this program, or whoever's appropriate? And I know our Nehemiah Director, Amy Wellman's here. We just appreciate the hard work you're doing.
Probably stole my question because I could not wait to hear more about what they're doing.
But you still got.
Well, I would love to invite our subrecipient partners up to just give a highlight. From a general staff perspective and report commission, this is one of our CDBG funded public services for the remainder of 2023 into 2024. And we're very, very excited to be rounding out what our homeless and unsheltered systems look like with congregate shelters for singles, non-congregate shelters for family, and then also our extreme cold weather and street outreach work that Nehemiah is coming along. So we have the director of the crisis response team. We have the director of the foundation. I would love to just give them maybe 2 minutes to share with you what they're going to do.
Yeah, thank you so much for your confidence and faith in us. It's been interesting to see how a faith community can come around social services, government, law enforcement, and in a time of emergency where you don't always have the ability to predict the weather, to just bring in a lot of volunteers, a lot of collaboration to add capacity at a time when the weather becomes extreme. One of the things that I'm most proud of is that we are very nimble. So we really come in as servant leaders to supplement what everybody else is doing. All of the direct service providers, we come in to just serve them, to add capacity, to respond to their needs. Everything from encouragement to rallying volunteers. We do have access to over 114 churches and a lot of people of good faith and goodwill to help bring supplements during that time. And Aaron Roy is the director of that initiative. If you'd like, does anyone want to hear a story, a heartwarming story about cold weather?
Absolutely.
Yeah, come on, real
Absolutely.
quick. So this will be our third winter, the very first time that we operated those emergency warming shelters in collaboration with Sheltered Inc. And now this year, Homeful as well, and anybody that's providing direct services to the homeless and street outreach. That first year, we actually, Ken Johnson at the time called it spinning up. We spun up and did the emergency warming shelter 3 times. Last year, it was only 1 time, but it was on Christmas Eve. So I'd love for Aaron to tell you maybe one heartwarming story.
Yeah, thank you guys for your confidence and faith in us. I have tons of stories, but I'm actually going to share one that I had today.
Just a super dope one, please.
Yeah, it's a super dope story. But I actually met a guy, Kevin, last year at our emergency warming shelter that happened during Christmas Eve. And he came up to, I hadn't seen him all year. I didn't know where he was at. And usually I know where folks are at because of outreach and working with different entities that are working with the unsheltered. And he came up to me. And when I met him last year, he was covered in soot because he was in like an RV, and he had a kerosene heater, and he was at a dangerous level in that small space using that heater. And you couldn't even recognize him. And then he came in and he took a shower at our warming shelter, and, you know, he started to look like himself. But anyway, today he came up to me and he was like, Aaron. And I was like, yeah, is that you, Kevin? You know, I didn't even really recognize him. And then he began to just thank us about, and for our hospitality and all the things that we had done. And he had just given us an update that he is doing well. He is in the programs he needs, and he just says he wants to serve more. But he was inspired by people. His words today was that it was Christmas, dude. This is what he said. It was Christmas, dude, and you guys were still hanging out with us and loving on us and caring for us. And he said that inspired me. So those are the stories that we live for. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to do
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you for sharing that amazing story. I appreciate you all.
Any other comments? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
One moment, please.
Are you using
And then-
dial-up tonight?
It seems that way. It really does. We have one new item that has been added to the agenda. Consenting to the reappointment of Ravi Khanna and Otis Williams to the Community Police Advisory Team and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? Appreciate these folks still willing to serve.
Absolutely.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. Rue.
Yes. That concludes that part of our agenda. Is there a committee report? Brian, do you have anything to report?
Yes, Commissioners, I want to specifically focus on the driving aspect of it, of what we've been doing from the Immigration Accountability Response Team. Again, I've talked about a lot of the work and efforts thanks to Jason Vai and working with various community leaders on bringing additional driver's education training. I spoke, I believe, last time about members of the Haitian community going up to Columbus and help recording a video in Haitian Creole to talk about just the driver's license process and the registration and insurance requirements that it takes to drive in the state of Ohio. But then they were also able to work with the state in offering driving simulators as well as an abbreviated adult driver's education training course in Haitian Creole. The first of those was held this last Friday of last week. And glad to say we had 70 original registrations for that. It ended up being a little bit smaller crowd than that. But there is another group scheduled to go through here later in the month of December. And we hope to continue to offer with other partnerships through with the state and other agencies, more opportunities for that driver education training. Because if we remember, one thing we learned when you're over 18 in the state of Ohio, it's fairly easy to get your driver's license without really any driver's education. And so being able to offer one driver's education to those over 18, but also in Haitian Creole so that they can start to understand our driving rules and regulations, the signage and so forth, that's a big deal for our community. We continue to look at housing issues and concerns that are brought forward. Steve Thompson and his group continue to take in any complaints about, typically multiple residents over the normal amount in a house. They continue to investigate those things, and remember, we're making sure that people are living in safe and sanitary conditions. That's our number one concern: is safe and sanitary conditions. And then we continue to work with other agencies on the human trafficking / job trafficking concerns that do exist, not just in the Haitian community, but just in general throughout our community.
So thank you. When I go back in my mind 3 months ago or more, when we had a room full that was, basically telling us, do something. We are doing things, never at the speed that the community would like, but the fact that we've gotten to a point where we've been able to partner with and pull in driver's education programs with simulators to help teach, that's important. That's things we can do. So it's just worth noting that we're doing what we can in the speed in which we can, and sometimes wish we can move much faster. Thank you for that report. And any other comments from commissioners?
I do have just one other comment. I wanted to openly request that Chris Wallace actually run for city commission when there's another seat that's possibly open. And so just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners?
Don't laugh.
Okay. I have 2 cards from the audience. And if you do want to speak, I do need a card. Jeff Brown, who is a former classmate of mine and football team member who put me in the dirt 1,000 times. My friend Jeff Brown.
Even though Jeff Brown's wearing
Got your
that
address
terrible
and name
shirt.
here. Hey, back off. Go
Terrible
ahead, my
shirt.
friend. You've been waiting a long time.
Hello, my name is Jeff Brown, address 12 West Columbia, Springfield, Ohio. I own the office here, across from the parking garage. My main topic that I wanted to discuss, just to bring it to your attention, I'm sure you're aware of, is public safety. I've been in Springfield pretty much my whole life. And I've seen a lot of, with my business that I'm in, I've seen a lot of things that are what I would consider soft on crime. Our law enforcement has been put in a serious predicament because of the situation they've been in, because it appears that there's not a whole lot of consequences when people have a warrant and they get arrested. So my concern is for our community and law enforcement. And I wanted to talk about a couple underlying root causes that I think contribute to that. I think there's a lot of things that make it that way, but some of the things that are contributing to it is basically when someone gets arrested, a lot of times they put a 10% bond on them. And when they put a 10% bond on them, like, for example, if they put a $7,500 10% bond on somebody, they pay $750 to the court, they get out. If they miss court, the court makes more money when they miss court from the bond than when they show up. I think that's a problem. Okay, so also when they miss court, they put a warrant out on them, but there's no set criteria. I mean, if it's a felony, there's a bigger pickup radius, but a lot of times there's violent things that are happening, and the pickup radius might just be Clark County. So they can go to Fairborn or Madison County or another county, do the same thing. And if the pickup race isn't at least an adjacent county pickup, they get to go. They don't come back. And the victim is the person the crime happened to. And I'm not talking about soft crime. I'm talking about violent crime, assaults, things to that nature. So one of the things, another thing is, one of the questions was the that I wanted to ask and answer is, are you aware that the court makes more money when the defendant misses court on a 10% bond? So once again, they pay $750, and I would like my data to be challenged, okay? Never in the history of Clark County has anyone ever gone after the $7,500 on a 10% bond. So my question is, why can they call it a $7,500 bond if it's never $7,500? They pay $750, they get out. Okay? There's never $7,500 on it. If I off the street come up to you and say I'm something that I'm not, I can be charged with a misdemeanor falsification charge. Why are we allowed to call a bond something that's never represented? If 7,500 is never in play, why are we allowing it to be listed as the bond amount? Never in the history on 10% bonds in Clark County have I ever seen anybody go after the full bond. But it's still called a $7,500 bond.
Jeff, Joe Allen is our law director. I think that this would be a conversation to have afterwards to find out some of these answers. We do 3-minute limits on our time, which I think you've passed a little bit.
Okay.
But, so because I didn't tell you that in the beginning, is there any final, do you want to make a final comment before we say goodbye?
Yep, last comment. I guess, in my opinion, when you put something out there that's like a $15,000 bond, like somebody shot into a habitation and they got $1,500 or $15,000 10% bond, they paid the full $1,500 and they got released, and somebody else got shot and killed about 3 months later. So, I mean, there's some problems with the system.
It's a huge problem.
So hopefully, I know that you guys can't solve it, but hopefully collectively a group of people can get together and try to figure out why. I mean, I don't understand, why things can be called certain things that they aren't from a public entity. That's the concern that I have. Thank you.
And I know, hope at least get some information, what we can look into.
We have your contact information, so I'll reach out to you.
Thank you. Diana Daniel. Been a while.
I'm not that tall. I'm kind of short. Diana Daniels, 40 Hedgley Road, Springfield, Ohio. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you, Mayor Rue. It's going to be kind of tough for me to say Mayor Rue when in the back of my head.
Mayor Robbie to you, okay?
I know, yeah. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate that. I'm going to play a little bit of fun with numbers just to kind of put our position, Springfield, into context and the magnitude of the issues that face us as a community. And I appreciate Brian Heck and all that you're doing with your board and so forth, but let's put it into context, shall we? Chicago, 2.697 million citizens, 22,000 immigrants bust in, and we know the issues that they're having. That changes their population by 0.85%. New York, 8,335,897 people. At the time I took my statistics or my numbers, they currently had on the books 130,600 immigrants. That changed their population by 1.6%. Springfield has 53,500 citizens. At this time, we don't know for sure how many NESs we have. An NES is a non-English speaking person, so that I can roll it all up. At last publication, it was 7,000. I think that's about half, considering the numbers that I saw come in 2021 on buses out at Dollar Tree. If we take those numbers either high or low, 7,000, or more higher, closer to 14,000, with our population of 53,000, give or take 500, that changes our population. Changes our population by 21 to 25%. I say this because they may be whining and we should be crying. and you saw a group of people in August, that was the tip of the iceberg. It's not going away. The buses are still coming in. But I will say this to you, Brian. We're doing an admirable job getting a handle on it. But what you're not remembering, and I'll say this just pestilently, as quickly as I can, you've been elected by the current residents of this city, not by some future residents to Bridgewater or Melody Park or Sycamore. I love you. You know that.
So Gary Armstrong.
If you could turn the speakers up, as a guy who should have hearing aids, it's hard hearing from those speakers. What that woman said, if her figures are correct, wow, is that, and that drops me back. That is big time what you guys should consider. I watched live last week where you were asking questions about why you want to be commissioner. I didn't hear anybody say, I'm a realtor, I'm a builder, I'm a negotiator, and I can do those things that it takes to know that property isn't worth $2 million, $1.7 million. You didn't ask it. It was like a JA meeting in 1975. I'm an old man. I've watched these meetings. I've watched the people it has. You have people that come down here that have some wealth or prominence, and they want to be a commissioner, and they have no idea how to spend taxpayers who are poor and rich and do it correctly. It's too weird. I'm just a down-to-earth guy who, if you really ask me, you treated me kind of like when I was yelled at because I said, I've been assaulted by a guy who's an official who turned a single family into a 4-unit. Guess what happened? A month or two later, because I said, does it make sense? He had 4 mailboxes, and then he took off 3. Did that make it legal because he took off 3 mailboxes? I'm living across the street. He lowered my property values because he has the audacity to be an official and do it illegally. Rob, you told me a couple months ago that you don't think the city can be sued. You can't just spend money.
I just think you're misquoting me, so please don't. You can continue your comments, but don't misquote us.
All right. Well, I'm
Just
gonna
keep
tell you,
talking. I'm
not done with this. They took 3 mailboxes off. There's a 4-unit still sitting there that was done totally illegal. You're trying to hire somebody, and I've watched in my last 50 years since I'm an old dude, Bechtel Avenue, my dog could have engineered something that wasn't that dangerous. People with a little money and our developers, you approve them, and you don't think, is this going to work? Is this feasible? Is it logical? From an engineering standpoint, totally messed up. Because you're going to pay for it again when you have to put feeder streets because it's a dangerous mess. This old building, how much money have we spent on it? It seemed like every 10 years we put money in it. Underground garages are notoriously problematic. Now we're going to fix this one and put thousands of dollars on a new plaza. Bad decision. On and on and on. But I'm not going to go away until this problem of a 4-unit, all done illegally, and guess what? Our whole permit system is being ignored. People just do what they want. Well, they don't want to stop at red lights, and you allow that. You have cars with...
Gary, thanks for your comments. That's the end of your time. Appreciate you. Come
I'll
back
see
and
you
talk
next
to us
week.
again.
Thank you, Mr.
2
Root.
weeks. 2 weeks. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, before we do,
Oh, listen.
I would like.
No, I'll take care of this. It's
All
my
right.
fault. I watched the Wildcats fight it out, and I don't want to ignore that time, and we all did. They were awesome, and I'm sorry I didn't say anything before that, but it was an awesome battle, and they were an awesome team, and Coach Mo is an amazing guy and his entire staff. So now you can say your comment, but it was an awesome game.
Yeah, I just want to, again, congratulate the team. Best public high school football team in the state of Ohio. Bar none. Bar none. And I would hope we would invite the team, as we have in the past, and the coaching staff to come to a commission meeting where we can officially recognize them.
Thanks, Doctor. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?